You don't have a productivity problem. You have a self-trust and a safety problem. What I mean by that is often we feel like we need to be more productive. We need to do more. We need to achieve more. But often that actually gets us lost in just endless faffing around. And I know this because I lived it. I remember I would do 10, 12-hour days, right, working on my business, but the reality was it was a deep procrastination. Yes, I was doing a lot, but I was always avoiding the meaningful change-making work that could have been done in 3-4 hours. Right? 3-4 hours of deep work was going to actually make a difference to a business instead of the 12 hours of just thinking I was doing. But the reality was I was only doing it because I was afraid, because I didn't trust myself. I felt unstable, and doing more made me feel stable, made me feel like I was good, I'm okay. Whew. But that's not really the best way to operate. And the best people that I know that are operating in the world as entrepreneurs, business leaders, leading sales teams, they don't waste their time just doing productivity for productivity's sake, right? They don't spend 12 hours a day creating fancy new Claude dashboards thinking they're working. What they do is they understand and they get to that real point of clarity and safety and steadiness internally, and they work from real leverage and practicality that, actually, what's the most important task? Let's do that for 4 hours in the morning, and then maybe have meetings later on in the day, instead of just doing nothing for 12 hours thinking I'm being productive. And I've got an amazing friend who was doing his jiu-jitsu to a really, really high level, to a professional level, and actually went to the world championships. And I remember he was talking about one of his biggest mistakes was very often when he was training, he would overtrain because he was afraid. And for him, training more gave him stability and it gave him confidence. But what was actually happening is he really burnt out his body and got to the competition day and he was operating at maybe 50, 60%, right? And nowadays, with all the information he has, with his understanding of psychology and development, he would have done it entirely differently. He would have operated from a space of steadiness, safety, security, and training with the goal in mind instead of training to feel safe. Now, this is the difference. When we're training with the goal in mind, it's like, okay, well, to get to B, to get from A to B, I need to do this, 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 this. It's very logical, it's very practical. I'm not feeling some emotion of fear or worry. I'm just like, that's what needs to be done. I'm going to get that done. And that's how really highly successful people operate. But what he was doing, and what I've done, and possibly what you're doing, is I'm going to just train, or I'm going to just be productive so that I feel safe, so that I feel like I've done enough for today, right? So I can get rid of that guilty voice and me saying that you need to do more. And so that's a very ineffective way of running a business, right? Because you're using all your cognition for 12 hours on stuff that really doesn't matter, instead of letting it be used for 3-4 hours in the morning at an actual point that's going to make a difference, right? But how do we make this change? Well, you can know this, you can see it, you can think, okay, yeah, I get it. But if we're operating from that guilt, from that fear, from that deep sense of not being safe internally, well, we're just going to go back to endless productivity. So to really make the change, we have to look at the internal architecture that created it to begin with. What is underlying this kind of productivity procrastination? And it will be different for everyone. But I remember a client came to me and they were doing the same thing. They realized they were doing it, but they couldn't stop. We started to explore, and for him, what the productivity was doing was it was making him get rid of this critical voice, right? This critical voice was like, you're bad, you're doing something wrong, I'm going to punish you. And we explored, what is the critical voice, right? Because that was his internal map. This critical voice was something he was trying to avoid, so he was endlessly working to get rid of the critical voice. And we realized that critical voice wasn't even his. Critical voice was just something he had taken on from a family member, right? Something that he had taken on as his own, but it had just come from outside of him. And so we just broke that down, right? Eventually giving it back to where it came from, right? Letting it go. And what happened with that is when he let go of the critical voice, he started to realize, oh, there's no guilt here. It's just a calmness, just a clarity. And from that, I have a motivation and a desire to grow the business. But my desire isn't to just get rid of a guilty voice. I actually want to make a difference there. Instead of just feeling like I'm good for the day. He started operating in a very, very different way. Yeah, I started operating from this calm, relaxed space and seeing that, you know what? I only have these 3-4 tasks that actually make a difference. I don't need that 12, 14 tasks that I was doing a day, because 10 of them were absolutely useless in making a difference to getting from A to B. We were just faffing around. And so when he noticed that, he started operating very consciously in the morning, getting all of his work done then, because he realized that that was when he was the sharpest, that was when he was able to do the most deep work. And then the rest of the day he would do meetings, he would meet with his team, meet with clients, and that sort of a thing. But if there was nothing else later on in the day, he would do whatever he wanted. Maybe go to the gym, maybe go to the beach, maybe hang out with some people. He didn't have this voice telling him he needs to do more. And yet, he noticed his teams becoming more successful this way. He noticed that he was making more incremental steps compared to before, where it had been on a little bit of a plateau. Now, the difference wasn't, any strategy, any tactics, any tips. The difference was he was operating from that deep safety, that deep sense of I'm already good, that deep peace. And then he was building on top of it. Instead of having these shaky foundations, where at the end of the day he just felt stable. He just felt like he'd done enough, and he was back to neutral. But in this case, he started from neutral. He was already good, and now he can build, right? He can actually move towards the next step instead of just trying to get it here. And that's such a big difference. Because when we operate from trying to outrun our own internal voice, right? A critical voice we may have even taken on, we don't get anywhere. We just get to the end of the day and we're in the same spot. We just feel like, the voice is gone. We're not doing it to build the business, we're doing it to get rid of the voice. But when we free ourselves from that, we can actually build the business. We can actually help the teams thrive, instead of just doing this kind of mental masturbation and procrastination, thinking we're being productive, but we're not doing anything of actual use.